What if I told you a baby died and the house help vanished the same night? No one knew where she went, until the truth was uncovered years later beneath an old neem tree. This happened right here in our modern city, not in deep village, not in the forest, but behind tall fences and beautiful houses where pain hides beneath painted walls. Welcome to Ready Writer Folktales, where I share stories of love, betrayal, loss, and the lessons they leave behind. There once lived a woman named Ijeoma Nwosu. For 9 years, she prayed for your child. 9 years of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and whispers from neighbors who thought she wasn't woman enough. Every month she hoped, and every month her hope broke like glass. Her husband, Chuka, loved her, but his love was beginning to fade into silence. He buried himself in work, leaving Chioma alone with her tears and her thoughts. Then one Sunday morning, when she had almost given up, something miraculous happened. She found out she was pregnant. The whole world changed for her. She sang again, she laughed again. She cooked for the poor and thanked every nurse that crossed her path. And when the baby finally came, a boy, she named him Kamsi, meaning as God said. 3 months after the baby's birth, Ijeoma grew weak. Her body was tired, her eyes always red from sleepless nights. Her friends advised her to hire a house help. At first, she refused. Nobody else should touch my baby, she said. But one afternoon, a woman named Madam Rose came to her gate, smiling politely. Your friend sent me. I have a girl, Madam Rose said softly. Quiet, clean, respectful. Her name is Chioma. She'll take care of your child like her own. Something in Madam Rose's eyes made Ijeoma uneasy. But her assumption warm. She agreed. That evening, a young woman arrived at the house, calm, shy, and beautiful in a strange, peaceful way. She greeted politely, her voice gentle like evening rain. From that moment, things began to change. The baby stopped crying at night. The house was spotless. Even Ijeoma felt lighter, but sometimes, when she walked into the nursery, she'd find Chioma humming songs she'd never heard before. Soft, haunting tunes that didn't sound like any language she knew. Still, she said nothing. After all, peace had returned, or so she thought. In Ijeoma's house, the days started to blend together like water and salt. Chioma worked without complaint. She woke before dawn, swept the compound, cooked the baby's food, and kept everything spotless. Everyone said she was perfect. But perfect things, my people, often come with hidden cracks. At first, it was just the songs. Later in the evening, when Ijeoma went to check on baby Kamsi, she would hear Chioma humming softly. The sound was sweet but strange, like an old lullaby from a place forgotten by time. The words didn't sound like English or Igbo or any tongue Ijeoma knew. Chioma, she asked one night, where did you learn that song? Chioma smiled faintly, not lifting her eyes. My grandmother taught me, she said. It helps babies sleep. Something about her voice made Ijeoma's skin prickle. It was calm, too calm. Days passed. The song continued. And then something new began. The baby started laughing in his sleep, laughing loudly, like he was playing with someone. But when Ijeoma rushed in, she'd find him alone in his crib, his tiny hands waving at empty air. One afternoon, Madam Rose came by to check on her worker. When she saw Chioma carrying the baby, her face went pale, just for a second, before she smiled again. You're doing well, she said quickly, avoiding eye contact. Keep it up. That night, Ijeoma couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Madam Rose's face. Why had she looked frightened? Around midnight, she got up to drink water. As she passed the nursery door, she heard a soft whisper. 2 voices, not one. One was Chioma's, singing the same lullaby. The other was deeper, slower, and it answered her. Ijeoma froze. The house felt cold, even though all the windows were closed. She opened the door, and silence swallowed the room. Chioma sat there, smiling gently, the baby asleep in her arms. Everything fine, madam? She asked. Ijeoma nodded weakly, forcing a smile. But deep inside, something told her the peace in her home wasn't real anymore. As she walked back to her room, she could still hear the faint echo of that song, hiding in the dark corners of the house. That week, Ijeoma began to notice little things that didn't make sense. The baby's toys would move from one corner to another. The curtains would sway even when there was no wind. And sometimes, when she entered the nursery, the air felt heavy, like someone was there. One evening, Chuka came home late. Ijeoma told him everything she had been saying. But he laughed gently, rubbing her shoulder. "You are just tired," he said. "Chioma is doing a good job. Maybe you should rest more." Rest? How can a mother rest when something feels wrong in her own home? That night, Ijeoma prayed longer than usual. "God," she whispered, "if there's something hidden in this house, show me." At exactly 2:47 a.m., a cry sliced through the silence, sharp and terrified. It wasn't the baby. It was Chioma. Ijeoma jumped out of bed and ran to the servant's room. The door was open. The light flickering. Chioma was sitting on the floor, eyes wide, trembling. "What happened?" Ijeoma asked, breathing hard. Chioma's lips quivered. "I saw someone," she whispered, standing by the window, watching the baby. Ijeoma rushed to the nursery, but found nothing. The baby was asleep, peaceful, his little hand gripping the edge of the blanket. She turned to Chioma, her voice shaking. "Who did you see?" Chioma didn't answer. She just stared at the baby's crib. Then she murmured, something that sent a chill down Ijeoma's spine. "Sometimes they come when he laughs." "They?" Ijeoma asked, but Chioma only bowed her head. For the next few days, Ijeoma didn't leave Chioma alone with the baby. She watched closely how Chioma moved, how she hummed that strange lullaby, but nothing strange happened again. It was as if the house had returned to normal. Until the 7th night. That night, Ijeoma woke to hear the baby crying again. Not the usual cry, but a desperate, painful wail that shook her soul. She rushed to the nursery, calling Chioma's name, but Chioma wasn't there. The baby's blanket was on the floor. The window was half open. The air smelled of something cold and damp, like rain before dawn. And in the distance, she heard it, that same lullaby, floating through the night. After that night's cry, Ijeoma tried to convince herself it was just fear playing tricks on her. But deep down, she knew something was changing, not just in her house, but in the air around it. Chioma began to behave differently. She still walked quietly, but sometimes she would stop suddenly, as if listening to a voice only she could hear. Her eyes looked far away, like someone standing between two worlds. One evening, as Ijeoma entered the nursery, she found Chioma standing beside the baby's crib, staring at him. The lullaby had stopped mid-song. Chioma's face was blank. "Chioma," Ijeoma called softly. The girl blinked, turned slowly and smiled. "Sorry, madam. He was smiling at something I couldn't see." The words made Ijeoma shiver. That night, the sound of tiny footsteps echoed in the corridor. Tap, tap, tap. Soft but clear. She sat up in bed, thinking it was Chioma. But when she opened her door, the hallway was empty. The air smelled faintly of baby powder and smoke. The next morning, Ijeoma asked Chioma if she'd been walking around at night. The girl shook her head quickly. "No, madam. I never leave the room after midnight." Ijeoma wanted to believe her, but her heart said otherwise. A few days later, she noticed something else. The baby would only stop crying when Chioma held him. Even Ijeoma's touch couldn't calm him anymore. When Chioma sang that old lullaby, the child went silent instantly, eyes half closed, as though under a spell. One afternoon, when Chuka came home early, he heard the song for the first time. "That tune," he said, "it sounds strange. Where did she learn it?" Ijeoma whispered. "She said from her grandmother." Chuka frowned. Then, her grandmother must have lived in a dark place. That night, rain began to fall heavily, beating against the windows. When Ijeoma opened the nursery door, she froze. Chioma was rocking the baby, but her shadow on the wall was not moving the same way she was. The rain roared louder outside, and in that moment, Ijeoma knew something in her home was no longer human. Chioma fed baby Kamsi, humming that strange lullaby again. Ijeoma watched her from the doorway. Her arms folded, her heart uneasy. Chioma, she said quietly, "You can go and rest. I'll take him tonight." Chioma shook her head, smiling faintly. "No, madam. He sleeps better when I'm here." Ijeoma hesitated, then nodded. But something in Chioma's eyes, something distant and empty, made her heart skip. Around midnight, Ijeoma woke suddenly. The house was silent, too silent. Her body felt cold. She couldn't explain why, but fear pushed her out of bed. She walked toward the nursery. When she opened the door, everything stopped. Chioma was standing by the crib, her face pale as chalk. The baby lay still, too still. "Chioma," Ijeoma whispered, her voice shaking. "Why isn't he crying?" Chioma didn't answer. She just stared at the baby, tears running down her cheeks. Ijeoma rushed forward, lifted her son. His little body was cold. She screamed, "Kamsi, wake up, please!" Chuka came running. The house filled with chaos and cries. But the baby never opened his eyes again. Ijeoma collapsed on the floor, clutching her son, her tears mixing with his cold blanket. The world around her disappeared. And through the noise, through the pain, one thing stood out. Chioma's whisper, barely audible, trembling. "I told them not to come. I told them to leave him alone." "What are you saying?" Ijeoma shouted. "Who did you tell?" But Chioma only knelt, her eyes far away, as if watching something behind the wall, something only she could see. By morning, the house was filled with mourners. The wailing could be heard down the streets. But before anyone noticed, Chioma had disappeared from the house. No one saw her leave. No one heard the gates open. She was simply gone. The morning after baby Kamsi's burial, Ijeoma sat alone in her room. Her eyes were red, swollen from crying. The house felt too large, too silent, as if it were holding its breath. And then she remembered Chioma, the house help that vanished before the baby was even laid to rest. No goodbye, no note, nothing. Her bed neatly made. Ijeoma searched every corner, the kitchen, the backyard, even the bathroom, nothing. Chuka called the agency. "Which Chioma?" The voice on the line asked coldly. "We never sent anyone with that name." Ijeoma snatched the phone. "She came to my house herself," she cried. "You told me you had someone for me." Silence. Then the line went dead. Later, Inspector BC came to investigate. Cameras at the estate gate showed nothing. No one entering, no one leaving. She couldn't have vanished into thin air. Chuka muttered, pacing. But Ijeoma could still hear it, faintly, almost like a whisper in the walls. Chioma's lullaby, slow, mournful, haunting. As Ijeoma packed away Kamsi's clothes, a piece of paper fell from a drawer, folded carefully, yellowed with age. It was a photograph, black and white. A young woman holding a baby. Her eyes widened. The woman looked exactly like Chioma. Determined, she asked Inspector BC for help, tracing Chioma's family. The officer handed her contacts for the village where Mama Ruth lived, warning quietly, "Some cases need more than our light." Ijeoma and Chuka drove to the dusty village road. They showed Chioma's photograph to anyone they met. Whispers followed them. Some villagers turned away. An old man chewing cola said her grandmother lived by the neem tree at the edge of the village, under a massive neem tree. At the edge of the village, under a massive neem tree, a small compound appeared. Mama Ruth sat weaving, calm as ever then, greeted them with quiet composure. "I'm looking for Chioma. I came because Chioma is missing," Ijeoma said, her voice trembling. "Please, tell us where she is." Mama Ruth pointed to a small grave beside the tree. "She lies here," she said softly. "Her body rests, but her story is not yet finished." "You wish to know everything," she said, then listened carefully. "She was my granddaughter. People blamed her for what she did not do. She never harmed anyone intentionally. Her eyes glistened with tears of unspoken sorrow. Chioma, she began, was a good girl, faithful and gentle. She worked for a wealthy family many years ago. Their baby died suddenly, and in fear and anger, they blamed her. They punished her unjustly. She tried to escape, but she collapsed beneath this neem tree. The villagers buried her quietly. No priest, no ceremony, only sorrow. Then why did she come to my house? Why now? Mama Ruth sighed. The truth has a way of finding those it touches. Your home, your baby. They were connected to the story she could not finish. People think spirits act with reason. Sometimes they only leave signs, whispers, shadows, things moved by unknown ends to remind the living that past wrong they never addressed. Ijeoma shivered. The wind stirred the neem leaves, and for a moment she could have said she heard the faint sound of a lullaby. Not sweet this time, heavy, distant, like a warning carried across decades. Ijeoma swallowed. You mean she didn't cause countless deaths? Chuka whispered. So, she didn't do anything wrong? No, Mama Ruth said softly. Restless, not malicious. Her story is a warning. A reminder of injustice and the secrets that refuse to stay buried. God allows some misery to remain, to remind us that truth cannot be buried forever. These signs, unsettling as they are, call us to seek justice, repentance, and honesty where it was denied. We must honor the truth, speak it, and lay it to rest. Only then can the unrest end. Chioma's story was a warning, a call to uncover hidden wrongs, not a threat to the living. Ijeoma felt tears slip down her cheeks. The weight of grief and revelation pressed on her, but also relief. The haunting was not evil, merely the residue of tragedy. As they left the village, the neem tree whispered softly in the wind, a final lullaby, distant and fleeting.